are Getting Strange, an X-Files rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And... Filefest?
Yeah, I've got some updates. I said I'd keep an eye on it for you.
Cool.
Yep, so this is Filefest, the X-Files fan convention, which is running in Minneapolis in the Mall of America from August the 30th to the 31st, 2025. So I said I'd keep you up to date with any updates. First of all, there's a number of VIP ticket packages that are currently available. They give you things like priority access, goodies, meet and greets with different actors, and autographs and things like that. There are various kind of tiers of them available. Just head over to the filefest2025.com website, that's Filefest with a PH, if you want to check out what the different tiers are. They've also announced a couple of extra guests this week. One is the return of Nicholas Lee, who played Kryzik. The other is a little more unusual one. They've announced Anne Simon is arriving as a guest. She was a science consultant on the set of The X-Files, and also the author of The Real Science Behind the X-Files book.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting person.
Yeah.
It's much like the scientific advisors that Star Trek presumably has, where you have to say, it's like, okay, so how long do you give them to weep before they start answering your questions?
True.
Well, I don't think we've got anything else, so we might have to move on to, hey, what's this? It's the episode that made Kim quit the X-Files.
Yay! And I really enjoyed rewatching it.
Yay! Daemonicus. Directed and written by Frank Spotnitz, and first broadcast on the 2nd of December 2001. So the two guest stars of note, the second one first, which is the guy who played Custer.
Okay.
Now, this is a weird one where he didn't actually been in anything we've actually ever seen or watched or paid much attention to. He's done lots of different bits of TV.
Okay.
But looking through the list there are a surprising number of sitcoms that are based on films that I don't think ever made it to this country, or if they did, just sank without a trace and we never paid attention to them.
Like what?
Uncle Buck. There's a TV series of Uncle Buck.
Is there really?
Yeah, and I don't know who thought this was a good idea and how it worked, but...
Huh.
So he's not doing anything particularly noteworthy, but he was looking for things we'd recognise, and it's like, what are these series and how do they get made and why? But obviously, the main guest star is Melissa Spotnitz, James Remar, who played Professor Joseph Cobbold, and it is Cobbold with a D.
Oh, it's with a D?
It's with a D.
Right, so it's not Cobalt like I was hearing it.
No.
It's Cobalt like the D&D characters.
Yes. So, he was in a semi-obscure film called Fatal Instinct.
Semi-obscure.
Semi-obscure.
Many people might not have heard of it.
No, not Basic Instinct, not Fatal Attraction, Fatal Instinct.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking Basic Instinct, I must admit.
This is the spoof version.
Oh, right.
Which involves skunks and Sean Young from Blade Runner, of all people. Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Where he plays Raiden.
He does. Not as good as Christopher Lambert.
I think he did a perfectly good job in a terrible film.
Yeah, but Christopher Lambert would have been way better in that terrible film.
Nobody has the passion of Christopher Lambert in the first Mortal Kombat, I think.
Anyway, he was in the remake of Psycho. That really pointless remake.
Oh, yeah.
What Lies Beneath? Hellraiser Inferno. I'd forgotten about.
Yes, he is Inferno. That's Hellraiser 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
Blade Trinity. And here's one. Ratatouille.
Who does he voice?
LaRose.
Who's LaRose?
I don't know, but James Remar was in Ratatouille. I had no idea.
Fair enough.
He's done other voice work as well, though. But X-Men First Class.
Yes, he is.
Django Unchained. The Blackcoat's Daughter, which I'd completely blanked out on.
Yes, he is in The Blackcoat's Daughter.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I missed that one.
No, I don't remember him being in that.
Of course, one of the big recurring ones is Dexter.
Where he played Harry, Dexter's dad.
Yep. The Vampire Diaries. Dude, the guy's just everywhere. And Legend of Korra.
Oh, who's
he
he voice?
Tonrak. I think he's the slightly villainous water tribe leader.
I recognise the name, yeah. I will note before I begin as well, though, even though I hate this episode and I'm wearing that on my sleeve, I don't hate James Remar. I think he's an excellent actor and I think he's wasted in this episode. Would you like to give us a synopsis of this stellar piece of television history?
No, but anyway. So from Wikipedia, following a bizarre double murder with satanic ritual overtones in western West Virginia, Doggett and Reyes are offered the case. Doggett and Reyes ask Scully to do an autopsy on the murder victim. Agents come to the conclusion that one of the murder victims was somehow tricked into killing his wife, while evidence at the scene points to two perpetrators. A single clue, the word Daemonicus, is left spelled out on a Scrabble board the victims had been playing before being attacked. When Reyes claims to have felt the presence of evil, Doggett responds with great irritation. Dr. Monique Sampson calls them, saying that the murders may be connected to an escaped mental patient, Dr. Kenneth Richmond, and a guard, Paul Gerlach. Meanwhile, in the wooded area, the two perpetrators, both wearing demon masks, face each other some 20 paces apart. One of the perpetrators shoots the other. At the mental institution, the two agents interview Joseph Cobbold, the neighbouring patient of Richmond. The answers Cobbold gives are unsettling for the agents, as he says that one of the perpetrators is killed again, showing them the location and warning them of something horrible happening there. After the dead perpetrator's body is recovered, Scully performs an autopsy and discovers the body belongs to Gerlach. The agents ask Cobbold for help finding the remaining perpetrator. When speaking to Cobbold, he suddenly speaks in strange backward whispering and erupts into convulsions. Reyes hears the word medicus, meaning physician. After putting Cobbold in the custody of another guard called Custer, Doggett and Reyes race to Sampson's home and find her dead, with a dozen hypodermic needles jammed into her face. During a one-on-one confrontation, Cobbold taunts Doggett about his personal life before vomiting all over him. That night, the power suddenly goes out in the mental institution. Custer approaches Cobbold's cell and witnesses him turning into a demon. Doggett phones Scully to tell her that Cobbold claims Richmond is at an old marina near Annandale, Virginia. Scully drives there but is attacked by Richmond. When Doggett and Reyes arrive, they hear a gunshot from inside an abandoned warehouse. There they find Richmond dead. Scully explains that he was holding her at gunpoint until they arrived, then shot himself. After Scully's lecture to FBI cadets, Doggett explains to her and Reyes that Cobbold planned the entire ordeal as a game and got away with it. Explaining that the word Daemonicus was code for the chosen victims' names in a game Cobbold devised to culminate in his eventual escape from the asylum. That the demon's angle was merely to get the X-Files' involvement and that they were thoroughly checkmated by Cobbold. Reyes, though accepting of Doggett's theories, is nevertheless disconcerted with the true feeling of evil that she experienced and believes Doggett was equally out of sorts because, though loath to admit it, he too felt its presence.
Thank you, I guess.
I'm going to start with the random point of we're still struggling to know what to do with Scully. And I know we know why this is happening, but it's really transparently obvious they were stuck. They'd set everything up in the expectation she wasn't going to be there, and now they've got to find something to do. And teaching at Quantico is the best they can come up with. It's not a bad thing for her to go and do. She has in the past expressed desire to do it, so it's not without merit. Scully teaching, that makes sense. I mean, one thing is the episode does do the cardinal flaw with all teaching scenes in all media of the teacher starts a new subject 30 seconds before the bell rings.
I always like, in my classes at university, if that something like that had happened, they'd also say, just 2 more minutes. And they would finish their topic as well.
But you wouldn't start a new topic that late.
No, they wouldn't start, but it's always if they're in the middle of a spiel, they just say, oh, just give me 2 more minutes. And they don't let the class leave. Whereas in all these American college set things I've seen, the second that bell goes, everyone's out of that room like a shot, even if the teacher's in mid-sentence.
I thought it was just interesting that Scully volunteers without prompting that she was on the X-Files. And whether the students know that she was on the X-Files or not is not clear. But the report is, have you ever killed a vampire?
Well, no, she hasn't.
She hasn't. She has met some.
And it was not for want of trying from Mulder's.
No. I think to be taken seriously, you can't then say, yeah, okay, so my partner killed a teenager with a stake. We were about to be reprimanded, and then the body vanished and attacked a medical practitioner, and every witness vanished from a town. Probably not going to be reflected on you the best way.
No. I know you're critical of that, but it is kind of addressing the elephant in the room because she must be aware that word travels in small circles and they know that she is on the X-Files.
I suppose so. I mean, the X-Files is at least famous enough for them to just leap straight to vampire.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's an odd one to pick up on because I'm thinking in terms of Fortean times, like the cryptids in our reality. Vampires aren't something people readily believe exist.
No.
Werewolves are dodgier, but you might get someone who thinks that's true. But alien abductions, why are they not talked about? He should have mentioned aliens. Vampires is a weird one to leap to in a supposed grounded series.
True. And at the same time, the official stance on the X-Files has always been that it is unsolved crime.
Yes.
And an unsolved crime isn't necessarily supernatural.
No.
I did think, to give the episode the tiniest iota of credit, I didn't think they were too ham-handed with what Scully was teaching, because Scully's class is, as by the horror movie trope of having a class like this, it's thematically linked, because it's about the difficulty of solving a case 100%.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the point at the end of this episode, is it doesn't wrap up neatly. A lot of X-Files technically don't do wrap up neatly, but not in a way that you can easily clarify in your case report.
Yeah. We need to talk about how we get to the final scene of this and just how frustrating it is.
Yeah, alright, I guess we should start at the beginning. I actually really like the opening sting of the episode. I think it's very effective and it's very creepy. That's about as far as I'm going.
Well, I was going to say, you said to me earlier, you made a connection to a similar-ish and linked series that nonetheless does it quite differently and a lot better.
I think it's no secret. It's been an inspiration on the X-Files from day one, but particularly in this episode, is we are aping Thomas Harris's Silence of the Lambs.
Particularly the film version with Jodie Foster.
Particularly the film version, and particular, we are trying to make Cobalt into a Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
So the thing about Hannibal Lecter, and I mentioned specifically the book Hannibal to you when we were reading this, so the villain in Hannibal, and he also appears, I think, in both the Hannibal movie and the more recent TV series, is a character called Mason Verges.
Yeah, he's briefly in season 2 and he's kind of integral to season 3, I think.
So Mason Verges is a patient of Hannibal Lecter who, through a mixture of drugs and just his sheer charisma, Hannibal Lecter convinces him to peel his own face off, basically, leaving him horrendously disfigured for life. But that's supposed to show us the level of charisma Hannibal has, which you particularly do see in the Brian Fuller series with Mads Mikkelsen, in which Hannibal Lecter frequently in the early seasons uses his position of trust as a psychologist to manipulate emotionally vulnerable people and get them to commit horrible staged murders. So you could argue that Hannibal is always the mastermind, though he rarely gets his hands dirty. Which is kind of what you've got here in Cobalt too. So to give a very gruesome example from the Hannibal TV series, there is an early episode where he gets a musician to essentially murder people and turn their bodies into cellos. So, using their innards to make the strings and all the rest of it. And then stage it on the stage like a kind of orchestral spectacle. So you've got that kind of art of murder sort of sense to it, which in the same way you've got this episode where Cobalt's manipulating people to create this sort of grisly tableau with two people playing Scrabble and the snakes coming out of their chests and all the rest of it. It just has that feel of Hannibal Lecter in particular.
Yeah, and it's impossible to deny that this might have led to how Brian Fuller put things together later.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we open it on this. It's a very Hannibal-esque scene with the staged murder, and that's kind of compelling. I quite liked that, with the two figures who are either demons or wearing really, really good demon masks, essentially torturing and killing this elderly couple who have done nothing.
Yes, and the usual thing of the person you think is one of the would-be killers is in fact a friend, but disguised in such a way. Like, was it Haunt, the haunted house one, where they put one of her friends in the mask at the end?
Yes, Haunt does do that.
And she guns her down because she thinks it's just the big bad to come to get her.
It's a very common horror trope. Even in old slashers like Valentine play the same trick of incapacitating a good guy, putting them in the villain's mask so one of their friends kills them.
Yeah.
It's a horrible feeling when someone's unmasked and you do feel the empathy for the character. Like in this case, this man unmasking his dead wife of 30 years that he's just shot.
Yep.
But I love that, and I loved even Monica's initial investigation of the scene where, just for one brief moment, the ceiling fan stops. It's so eerie and it sets the scene so nicely, and then the episode's entirely downhill from that moment.
Yeah. Well, just to dwell on the figures as well, because neither of us have watched much of Millennium. I've watched Jose Chung's Doomsday Defense because, of course, I watched Jose Chung's Doomsday Defense. So not for the best reasons, but I understand there is an episode where it's like that Batman one where all the villains are playing cards and they're talking about how Batman defeated them.
The Batman one, it's all their stories about how they almost got Batman.
Yeah, and in the end, one of them is actually Batman in disguise, isn't he? He's been there the whole time. So there's an episode of Millennium like that, or as I understand this how it works, is it's a bunch of demons congregate to talk about how Frank Black has screwed them over.
Right.
One of the jokes is that basically you see a TV show that's being produced in one of the stories with a red-headed woman doing an autopsy and a guy in a suit doing an autopsy on an alien body.
Okay.
There's a nod back there, and Darren Morgan being the showrunner for Millennium during this time means that was very deliberate. My point I was going for, though, is since Millennium and X-Files did cross over with Millennium, the idea of demons wearing human clothing doesn't read as impossible at all. So the fact they had the really good demon mask on, I thought the first time watching it through, you could think that these are actually demons. Particularly as it's got that thing that I've seen, I think only Kick-Ass has ever kind of addressed, in that when superheroes or other people wear masks, the only way to get the mask to sort of cover the face and cover up the eyes so well
they have to put color on their eyes.
Yeah, you have to paint.
Yeah.
So when they're some of the close up of the demons, you can see the makeup has gone right the way up to their eyelid. Not easy to do at short notice or quickly.
Those are really high quality masks, well applied.
I mean, we do also run down into the usual Hollywood fictional depiction of masks, like in The Lone Gunman, of you can just put this rubber mask on, whereas if you watch any behind the scenes thing of like Star Trek or Lord of the Rings, you know that 5+ hours in a chair with super glue.
Yeah.
And there is no fast or easy way to do this, and getting off again is also really awful.
Well, you kind of do see that in the autopsy of one of them, where Scully has to literally cut the mask off him.
Yeah, but it just peels off though, so he doesn't have to sort of try and pry it off his skin or anything. It just lifts off. It's the magic rubber masks of fictitious Hollywood.
Yeah. It should be noted as well, which I only discovered reading the notes from this, that this is supposed to be entirely supernatural.
Yeah, that's a really odd thing to find out.
Because that was not my reading of it all.
No.
I was kind of on Team Doggett for this. I didn't think it actually was supernatural. There are some bits that don't really fit together at the end, but I thought that was the kind of point of Scully's speech, is the fact that sometimes things just don't fit together.
To hear that it's meant to be supernatural is weird. I mean, one of the things that doesn't jibe well with that one is him transforming into a demon in his cell near the end in the lightning storm.
See, I could take that in the same way, because it has a lot of a feel of an inferior version of Irresistible.
Yeah.
I know Horizon did muddy the waters by actually turning Donny Faster into a demon, but in Irresistible, that was just the way Scully saw him, to kind of illustrate the fact that he was pure evil. Which, a big theme of this episode, again, is Reyes saying that she could sense pure evil in the room. The entire point in Irresistible being that man can be this evil. It doesn't have to be something supernatural. Evil exists in man.
Yeah.
But in the case of this one, it's not. It's Satan, apparently, moving through these people.
Yeah. Well, the thing that occurred to me, and it's unhelpful, but kind of, but and it doesn't really with the road mask, is some videos that go around on Tumblr recently of some of these really quick change masks. I can't remember if it's Chinese or Korean or somewhere in that.
Oh, the dance.
The dance, but they sort of just do their hands across the face and the mask changes. It's like, it's not impossible to do that practically. People can do it. The setup is actually presumably it's quite elaborate, but people can do fast changes on masks really easily. So, yeah, it's not impossible that was what was happening.
Yes, Penn and Teller investigated that in an episode of their series. Apparently it's a very closely guarded secret how they do it, but it is a sleight of hand trick.
It's incredible to see it done.
Yeah.
And I cannot figure out how they do it, but...
Apparently, even if you know how to do it, there is such a level of skill to do it, it doesn't necessitate that you can even pull off the illusion.
Well, I'm guessing, given what you're going to have to do that, it can't be simple. But yeah, so I could buy that was also completely mundane, even though it seems to be geared to be supernatural. So what got me as well is the X-Files, we've mentioned a few times, likes to hedge its bets. Because usually the audience gets to see the impossible thing. Mulder gets to see the aftermath and come up with either the correct theory or something close to it. Scully will give a mundane explanation for how it could work. And usually by the end of it, Mulder is left without sufficient evidence and Scully's not left with sufficient doubt to say definitively what happened.
Yeah.
But her explanation would explain what's going on. It's unlikely, but it's plausible. And I think we mentioned a few episodes ago where she hasn't done that for a while. And that's kind of bad because that was one of the strengths, really, to keep things ambiguous. And not just have she's not who you think she is. She works for the Department of Justice. And is also a super soldier. And evil.
It's the Sheridan Le Fan effect of explaining a really unlikely way that somebody could have hallucinated the entire affair.
Yeah. And the X-Files used to be reasonably good at that. I mean, I can imagine it getting old 9 seasons in there. At the same time, that's your mindset. All you've let the characters do is accept that aliens might exist. So Scully does seem to be able to backslide quite easily on aliens existing. Skinner has also not mentioned it for a while.
I think we can see in this episode, it's take it either way. My problem with, and it's a problem that's compounded in both of these episodes we're going to talk about today, is that Monica Reyes doesn't really have a focus to her character. By which I mean, So we know Mulder from the very first episode from Pilot, it was all about discovering the truth of what happened to Samantha. Scully originally was brought on board to debunk him, and she took her job very seriously, but following her abduction, it kind of changed around to more, I want the truth about what happened to me. So again, she's got focus. Dogger, we've only really had drabs of his backstory so far, but we know his son was murdered and he hasn't caught the killer. So we have that kind of focus behind Dogger that we can tap into as well. And also an explanation of why he is and why he's very police procedural. Reyes has nothing. All we really know about Reyes is she has a bit of a crush on Doggett. She's known him for a long time. And her expertise is supposedly satanic ritual murders, although she's never seen a genuine one. And despite the fact she has an interest and expertise in ritual murder, something that's not known to be very clean and pleasant, she just seems to be freaked out by any crime scene she comes to.
Yeah. She also doesn't have a filter, which Mulder was occasionally really bad for saying really stupid things to the wrong people. There was a line he drew. He did have the sense not to say certain things to certain people. Monica apparently doesn't, and I'm not sure how she's still employed.
I'm also not sure how she's got this far in her career,
No.
because it makes her come across as very naive.
Yeah.
And how you can get this level of prestigiousness amongst the FBI when you are that damn naive is beyond me.
Yeah. It's twofold. I understand why she's been shoved in the X-Files, but it's the kind of thing that you don't need to do that if there was some reason why you didn't want to lose them. Because I think one of the things the X-Files did establish early on is Mulder's really good at the violent crimes psychoanalysis.
Yes.
And so he managed to convince them to let him do the X-Files, and presumably he's still doing his regular work on the side because he's really good at it. And they let him because they didn't want to lose him, because it'd be easy to fire him.
They do occasionally. It becomes increasingly rare throughout the series. You have episodes where Mulder's called upon to consult on things as well.
Yeah.
Like the one with the salamander hand guy and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's mostly a season 1 thing, and then they kind of abandoned it because it was drawing focus away from what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
But the mindset at least was there, was this was the only reason Mulder's getting away with it.
Mm.
Dogger and Reyes, it's just, we need to keep the TV series running, unfortunately. There's no good reason why they're allowed to keep going.
Yeah.
Especially Reyes, because there's nothing about her that means that they don't want to get rid of her, and that's why they've dumped her in the X-Files just to keep her happy. You could throw her back to New Orleans without a problem at this stage. That whole investigation on Kirsch is finished.
Mm.
And the naivety, the lack of filter, and it's odd that to have the gender flip Mulder and Scully, and then discover that the writers don't know how to write Monica Reyes any better than they knew how to write Scully.
Yeah.
I don't think they don't have a handle on the character, and it's possibly because she was introduced in season 8 to fill in some plot problems. Because I think if they hadn't killed Diana Fowley off screen, hadn't murdered Melissa, one of them would have stepped up to be there at the birth of Scully's child.
Yeah, I maintain, I'm pretty sure I brought it up before. If we could have possibly brought them in, I think either Phoebe Green or Diane Fowley would be better placed to play the Monica Reyes part. It's no disrespect to Monica Reyes as actor or anything like that.
Oh, no, Annabeth she's great.
I just think they are kind of more deeply entwined with both Mulder's past and the X-Files themselves.
Yes, and both of them would have a reason why you might dump them in this department to keep them around, but not let them go under your feet.
Yeah.
Reyes it's impossible to understand why Reyes would be given this level of deference.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
And Phoebe, I understand that Phoebe Green is going to anger people, but yeah, she probably
Well,
would
you bear in mind, she was never brought back before because fans hated her so violently. Yeah. So I don't think they would bring back Phoebe. But there's no reason we couldn't have brought back Diane. As it's been pointed out by yourself, she died off screen.
Yes.
So she's not definitely dead. No one in Hollywood is dead unless you actually see them dismembered on screen.
Exactly.
Which, to be fair, Hannibal did.
Yeah.
But there we are.
Even then, it doesn't really stop some people.
Yeah. One of the big things that critics picked up on, and I agree wholeheartedly, this episode had very mixed reviews. No one was overtly positive. They kind of went from being negative to average for it. I'm on the negative camp, obviously. But one of the big things is basically how over the top the episode is. Particularly the cinematography, the kind of cross wipes, all the weird fades that we get in this episode. That weird scene where the sky looks like it's boiling, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was some odd odd choices there.
And some of it in particular, there's the bit that I told you looked like a Shining shot when we were watching it, is when the checkerboard floor kind of fades across the screen when they're walking across the mental hospital.
Yeah.
Just to kind of obviously bring your mind, this is all a game, it's like chess, haha, aren't we clever? It's just overkill, it looks ridiculous, to be honest.
It doesn't look very good, no.
Yeah.
We probably should talk about Bargain Basement Hannibal Lecter.
Ah, Mr. Cobbled.
James' reminder of himself is fine. Got no complaints about what he's actually doing, but his role in the story, on the other hand.
I think Bargain Basement Hannibal Lecter is right. It's Hannibal Lecter written with trying to do Hannibal Lecter over the space of one episode is hard anyway. You don't even get a full-length movie with him. But it's also missing why Dr. Lecter is so compelling. And I will say, Mads Mikkelsen is my absolute favourite take on Hannibal Lecter through cinema, because, he's been played by 4 different people now. But the compelling thing about Dr. Lecter is the fact that he comes across as being harmless. He is very harmless, he's very well spoken, very intelligent. He's very good at figuring out what a person's vulnerability is and playing into it. Compare the scenes where James Remar is trying to get aggressively into Doggett's head in particular, where he just kind of talks at him and won't let Doggett breathe. That's not how Dr. Lecter does it. That's not how you convince vulnerable people to do terrible things. That's just aggressive psych out, really.
Well, obviously because he's actually possessed by Satan.
I'd like to think that Satan was a bit more slick, though. I mean, the great deceiver in the room. It's not even just a devil, though. We are led to believe Satan is supposed to be talking through this man.
It feels one of those things, you don't leap to someone that high, just like, you didn't have God show up in any of the biblical stuff.
And ditto, it's always unclear what some of the satanic characters like Ms. Paddock was.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been Satan in person taking the form of a harmless woman, or it could have been some lesser demon messing with them. You don't actually know.
No, we've no idea what she was ultimately.
Mm.
And that was kind of creepy anyway.
I would have taken Miss Paddock coming back for this. Miss Paddock would have had more fun. In a way, Dr. Lecter's almost supernatural with his ability to coince people, but that's kind of what makes him compelling.
Well, yeah, it's the thing, like, it's also Sherlock Holmes, is that the level of observation and everything is probably beyond anyone's naturality. But it's compelling to read, and you can aspire to be like this. Maybe not Hannibal Lecter so much.
I don't know, I think Mads Mikkelsen's Hannibal Lecter is oddly appealing. It's why he's got so many female fans.
Well, yes.
Even though, people who fell in love with Hannibal Lecter in the TV series did not come out of it very well.
No. I think we should talk about the ending.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Okay. So, I can kind of see where they were going with the whole, you split Daemonicus up and each part of it means something. It's potentially kind of cool as a reveal.
So, you kind of brushed over it, I
did.
think, on your introduction. But it's basically, you break the word in 3. So you have Day, D and A are the initials of the first 2, the elderly couple.
Yep.
Moni is Monique, whatever her name was, the psychologist.
Yep.
And Cuss is Custer, the police officer that gets killed in his place at the end, allowing him to escape.
Yes. And you can kind of, in a better written story, that would be the kind of illustration of how far. Basically, if this was Sherlock Holmes, this would be Moriarty would have done that.
Yes.
And you wouldn't blink twice. You'd think, oh, good God, he got us at every turn. In this, however...
Well, alright, I'll give them the Day, because he just plucked the names out of a phone book to get him the letters Day.
Yeah. Though we both pointed out that Moni has a huge problem when you have a character called Monica in your TV series.
And he was trying to lure the X-Files to investigate him as well. That was always his intent with making it look supernatural. Or actually be supernatural. It's confusing at this point. So he would have been aware of Monica Reyes.
Yeah.
The other obvious Moni.
Yeah. Or even the C of Custer.
Yeah. Could have been part of Monica.
Because I think that's one of the areas it falls down is he's chopping up Daemonicus arbitrarily. And when you see it written down as well, though, sometimes the A and E combine into that kind of the weird letter.
Like the one in his Dark Materials for
Yeah,
Demon.
Damon, yeah. That point about Dogguts is also, that's not true either.
And then Custer. So Custer's the one that gives me more pause. It's really the only point you can argue his plan is supernatural in any way, because how would he have possibly known otherwise that they would put that particular police officer guarding his room?
Oh, the little people he's whispered to over the years.
However, I was thinking of this in the fact that, people who do play word games can do things. You already said you could take the C into Monica.
Yeah.
That would leave us. And you could really interpolate anything with the word us. You could, there were so many ways you could have said, he was referring to the way he'd fooled the two of us at the end of it, or something like that, which would then really mess with his word game more. It's just so ambiguous. If we were trying to get on the basis of, how would he have known about these people if he was not a psychic? No, he would have literally known about the first three. Custer's the only variable in there.
Yep. Is he's taking something that, on the surface, is probably a red herring, and he's made it central to the case. Doggett is actually doing conspiratorial thinking here, though, because he split that word up really arbitrary. Because I'd be more satisfied if it was like if you cut it into 4-letter chunks and each one of them could mean something.
Yeah. That
would have been compelling, but not DAE, money, and then cuss. Yeah, no.
It's a problem throughout the episodes, though, because I said, I don't normally play Team Doggett, but in this episode, there's the bit in particular where Cobalt vomits horribly over the entire room, and Reyes decides it's ectoplasm.
Yeah.
And Doggett kind of says, well, no, he just vomited everywhere. And she said, why are you jumping to that conclusion when we haven't even had it tested, Doggett? Why are you jumping to the opposite without getting it tested, Monica? It's exactly the same argument.
Yeah, it's like, we don't know what this is. I mean, if it is ectoplasm, it will come up with inconclusive. Okay, let's have this conversation after it's been tested, not beforehand.
And they never do get it tested in the episode either.
Oh, it's infuriating.
Yeah. Interestingly, that vomit scene as well was supposed to be a lot more subtle, but they took a lot of takes of it, and Chris Carter insisted that all the footage was kept in, which is why it's kind of hysterical now, because it just goes on for so long with the, X's pea soup vomiting.
Not packed on the meaning of life version.
No, that's true.
So, again, there's nothing can be done that Chris Carter cannot make stupider.
Yep. But yeah, did you get the impression I don't like Daemonicus?
I did get that impression as well. Do we have anything else for this one, or should we just skedaddle to something slightly better?
Oh, please, let's stop talking about Daemonicus.
Okay, so I guess we should commence some 4D chess then.
Oh no, not more chess. No!
Chess. Okay. So, 4D, directed by Tony Walmby, written by Stephen Mader, and first broadcast on the 9th of December 2001. Guest stars: Dylan Haggerty is Erwin Timothy Lukesh. He was in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Ah.
And the series.
Oh, who is he?
He's one-off roles in both of them. He's not a regular.
Oh, okay.
But
that's cute.
Wow, that's one hell of a career change. Sliders. He is in Millennium, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Seinfeld.
Feels appropriate he's in Sliders.
It does. And Angela Patton is Miriam Lukesh, his mother, who was in Dirty Harry.
Oh, cool.
Uncredited. Flatliners, which I've never seen, but unfortunately I kind of not.
The Father Ted joke.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
Groundhog Day.
Okay. Star
Trek Voyager. Carolyn in the City. And Sliders as well.
Very, very appropriate.
Yeah. So would you like to tell us about 4-dimensional chess? Or just 4D?
Sure. As always, I'm kind of ad-libbing this off Wikipedia. We open on an FBI sting this time, as Reyes on the scene monitors a man called Erwin Lukesh, who's a suspected serial killer known for cutting out women's tongues. Meanwhile, Doggett and Fulmer are watching her over CCTV. At some point during the sting, Lukesh seems to become aware of the operation and starts to flee, causing Reyes, against orders, to pursue him. As Doggett observes this electronically, he suddenly hears Reyes scream and rushes to help her out to discover that her throat has been cut and she's dying. Doggett gives chase to Lukesh and corners him in an alleyway, where he seemingly disappears and reappears right behind him, shooting him with Reyes' gun. Confusingly then, the setting changes to Doggett arriving at Reyes' new apartment with a housewarming gift of hot dogs for her. Neither of them seem to be aware at all of the previous events. However, when she turns away from Doggett for a minute, Reyes receives a call from Skinner, who informs her that Doggett has been shot and is being taken to hospital. Confused, she tells Skinner that Doggett is currently in her apartment, but turns around to find he's not there. Doggett is rushed into surgery, and Scully tells Reyes the bad news of even if he survives, he's likely to be paralysed from the neck down. The FBI managed to retrieve a bullet from his body, and on examination discover it was fired by Reyes's gun. Due to this, she was brought into questioning by Fulmer, but defended by Skinner, who points out the fact that when he spoke to her on the phone, she was 14 miles away from the crime. We see outside of the room, as Reyes is questioned, Lucas has been brought in to watch, and he identifies Reyes as the shooter. Doggett eventually regains consciousness, but can't breathe without help of the respirator, and can only communicate via Morse code, and eventually by tapping on a computer keyboard. In the meantime, we also see Lucas return to his apartment, and we see that he lives with his severely disabled mother. We see the true horror of their relationship. Unbeknownst to the mother, Lucas is preparing her food and is feeding her the human tongues he's cut from his victims. When Doggett eventually identifies Lucas as his shooter, Reyes begins to do background checks on him and starts to create a theory of how he came to do the crime, especially as Doggett expresses confusion to Reyes being okay, because last time he saw her, she was dying. Reyes starts to conclude that Lucas can actually travel between two parallel universes in order to kill people. She also concludes that the Doggett she knows, the unharmed one, must have disappeared because two versions of the same person can't exist within the same timeline, and when Doggett was shot by Lucas, he somehow dragged him into the other world with him. Fulmer and Skinner both question Lucas, who becomes agitated when they also say that they'll need to speak to his mother. Noting this, Skinner really pushes the point, indicating that the mother is going to be questioned about him. This causes Lucas to return home and discover that his mother has found the gun which he used to shoot Doggett with, and plans to talk to the FBI of it. He kills her in the same manner he kills other women. Doggett starts to believe Reyes' story about the twin worlds, and decides that in order to resolve the situation, she must turn off his respirator and allow him to die. Reyes initially refuses to do so. Suspecting that Lucas has left his mother and is planning on killing Reyes, he convinces her to go back to her apartment while he, Scully and Fulmer all monitor her. Reyes does just this, but is attacked by Lucas, who is already waiting for her. As everyone rushes to aid her, Fulmer leaps into the room and manages to shoot Lucas in the head, killing him instantly. After this, Reyes returns to the hospital and decides to grant Doggett's final wish, shutting off his respirator. She closes her eyes in tears, and as she opens them, she finds herself back in her apartment at the moment Doggett disappeared earlier. She is stunned and upset and embraces Doggett, who is very confused as to why she's crying and asks her what is wrong.
Thank you. Feels like this would have come up in Synchrony.
Oh, the actual time travel one.
Yeah.
But as you kept saying when I kept calling this time travel and watching it, it's not time travel, it's parallel worlds.
But it is two people in the same timeline.
In my head, I'm thinking more Steins Gate. This is phone wave stuff where we're moving in the same timeline.
Yes, I mean, I would actually go for... Monica jumps to this conclusion without a lot of prompting. She gets there really fast, which I understand you have to do for a TV thing, but...
She also does have some good evidence, because it's Doggett's insistence that she's dead.
That's true, but if Scully was more involved, and I think this is the last time we could struggle to put Scully into an episode because she's markedly just jammed in there.
Yeah.
Is Scully would sort of say, well, in terms of trauma, when he was in this coma, he could have been having very vivid dreams, he could have misremembered something or dreamt something, and thought that was a memory rather than what he actually experienced. There are ways of excusing that, which they didn't get to. Because I was thinking about it, is what you really need is that Lukesh brought something with him that's flatly contradicting the real world, like a newspaper with the wrong headline or something, or some historical event in the bad universe that hasn't happened in their universe.
He needs his gel nana.
Gel nana, what's he going to do with the gel nana other than put it in the microwave?
The gel nana keeps coming back to X-Files.
It does. But she is like a news report about, the list of serial killings that he's done.
It's only inferred in the episode, but I think it's quite obvious that he's getting away with his serial killings because he's alternating between worlds. As well, you needed some kind of more emphasis on that, I think.
Well, actually, I think he was doing them all in the parallel world. He was sort of killing in the dark universe you saw at the start, then coming back to our universe and just sort of living with his mother.
I'd be kind of curious what happened to his double as well, because presumably he had one at some point.
Yes, and, also... For an X-Files episode, it's also kind of odd that we've left off any details of how this works, how he discovered it.
One critic at the time was very critical of that, and I would argue against that, to be honest. Say you
It
don't
can-
need to know.
You don't need to, but if you're left asking these questions, it usually means that something's gone wrong. I mean, you can get away with not doing it, but I think the episode kind of focuses on them in a weird way where it starts to prompt the question.
I disagree. I don't think we need to know how he does it. Just the fact he does it is enough, really.
Fair, but I still think he should have dropped something that directly contradicts lived reality to give Monica the spark.
It's interestingly, just before Christmas, I streamed the latest Life is Strange game, which basically has this exact plot, down to the fact of she witnesses a shooting and then reality splits and she discovers she can pass through both worlds. In one world, the shooting hasn't taken place, and in the other, essentially, she's the number one suspect for the shooting because she found the body.
Yeah.
So you've got a very similar plot to this, interestingly, in that video game.
It's true. And this could be an explanation for so many other X-Files cases.
What, Twin Worlds?
Yeah, I'm not. Why Monica doesn't go to each show each time, I don't understand. I would also question putting everything back to normal at the end is there's a lot of faith there. A lot of faith.
I'm going to argue again. It's something that you can't get across necessarily because Doggett is rendered mute for most of this episode. But I think that Doggett was just wanting to die, to be honest.
Yes, I get that.
It's either way Doggett wins in this situation. The world's put right, or she's ending in suffering. She's euthanizing it.
Yeah.
Is it telling that it's written by the same guy as Red Rum, then?
It explains a lot, because I think there's a lot of very similar ideas at work.
This is Stephen Maida, isn't it? Who's also, interestingly, One Piece's showrunner at the moment, the live action.
Quite a career jump there.
I think it's quite good.
For a serial killer, Lakesh has some weird quirks, I think. Like, I get, some of it's fine. It's like straight razor, kind of, we've seen people with straight razors, cut out tongues, fair enough, slicing throats, all the rest of it. Serial killers, outside of Hannibal Lecter, because I just realised that's the other connection, don't tend to eat their trophies or feed them to other people. Hannibal Lecter did delight in doing this, and so does Lakesh.
I've listened to a lot of true crime. I think you're making a sweeping generalisation
Oh,
of this.
People do this.
Yes.
Okay, fictional serial killers don't tend to eat it. Hannibal Lecter's like the only one in fiction.
Maida admitted that a lot of the inspiration for this character, and you can clearly see it, is Norman Bates from Psycho.
Yeah.
And his goal was to make a villain for the series that was frightening and that people would remember. To be fair, he's quite hit the nail. It's a scary character.
But at the same time, he's also just, you kind of want someone to punch him in the face. He's very smarmy as well.
Well, he's one of these kind of sociopaths who think they're very clever, though.
Yeah, but it was just the fact that Reyes didn't, take a swing at him or something.
I'll give him the whole... I'm surprised that people didn't poke holes in his story faster.
Yeah, it's weak.
Oh, yes, we've got a witness. What? One other person who was on the scene who couldn't possibly be the actual killer.
Who didn't see the shot. He heard the shot and saw her run out of an alleyway when Skinner has her at her apartment 14 miles away.
Yep. So we know that it wasn't Monica.
Yeah.
But one person has witnessed this and couldn't possibly be the killer.
I think as well, it does lead into that thing you mentioned about Reyes being really naive, is they let her get all the way to the police station into that interrogation room. And at no point did she say, wait, you're trying to arrest me, or you're going to charge me with something. She walked right the way in there without kept saying, what's going on? What is this?
Yeah.
Because how are you working in the FBI and not know police procedure and everything? I just watch TV and I understand what you're doing.
To be fair, she's probably not in a good mental state because Doggett's more than her partner. We've mentioned before, it's quite obvious there's some chemistry there.
Yeah.
And he's potentially dying.
Yes.
So she's not going to be in the right headspace, is she?
I mean, he also did just disappear from her apartment, which got to do with a lot of thing. Dimension jumping is... It's very interesting that the two guest stars were insiders. I mean, what were the chances, really?
A TV show that was literally about dimension jumping.
Yeah. And... I don't know. I think it's Monica jumping to the conclusion is what doesn't sit right with me.
I actually really like this episode. I think it's very atmospheric. It's a very depressing episode. My big problem with it is I think it should have come later in the series when we know that Monica and John have had this kind of history together, but we haven't had much time to see it yet.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have it building through the series and then this be at the tail end. Once we've grown to kind of Niles and Daphne style, be rooting for them for a while.
Yeah. I would agree with that one. I think this is too early, but at the same time, it's you can tell it's early because we don't know what to do with Scully.
Additionally, I think you can guess what the actual inspiration behind this episode was. It's actually quite an obvious one when you think about it, and it's pulling inspiration from a kind of interesting place.
They're not sliders.
No, real life.
Real life. Okay.
It's Jean-Dominique Bowlby. It's The Diving Bell and the Butterfly.
Obviously, yes. Yeah. Actually, I have read that.
Yes, it's so had Steve Mider, and he was trying to find a way that locked-in syndrome could be used within the X-Files. His initial thought was they'd do it with the NPC of the week, basically, but then he thought it would have more meaning if they did it to a major character, to give them locked-in syndrome and have this kind of additional horror to it, this kind of real-world horror. But also Doggett himself, Robert Patrick, suggested the scene in which Monica shaves him, because apparently that's something that happens in The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And when he was reading it through, he thought this was an incredibly intimate scene, to shave someone else who now cannot shave for themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
It's right, it's one of the kind of most bittersweet, kind of nicest scenes in the episode is when she does shave him.
Yeah, I can't dispute any of that.
Mm.
But no, to go back to your point of putting this later would have worked an awful lot better. Because I think you observed it last time, is that Reyes doesn't have a focus or a goal or something to build towards.
Mm.
More to the point of it, we are kind of expected to really root for her and Doggett as much as it's effective, as much as it does work. We're coming to this with a lot of history with the series and a lot of familiarity with both characters, as much as you can get for the kind of limited window they're in there.
Mm.
On broadcast, though, you've seen Reyes 5 times at this point. It's like 3 or 4 episodes in season 8 and 2-3 episodes of season 9. Not spent a lot of time with her because they didn't try and pull this with Mulder and Scully till a lot later on.
Whereas we've had now an entire season of Doggett, and with him largely being focused with very little Mulder.
Exactly, but Reyes, we've suddenly got romantic inclinations coming in very, very fast. Because things like just wiping the mustard off of his face and everything, and that sort of Doggett kind of panicked by her doing that. Which is a nice touch to really set up the whole sort of he's picking up on what her mindset and everything, and how conscious she is of what how intimate that was is not clear.
Yeah,
and I don't have a problem with the two in this relationship, but yeah, it's Monica. We as an audience shouldn't really have any idea who she is still.
No,
she's really new and also kind of insane. I mean, I know this is going to be played for laughs. Not too long in the far future, we're going to play this for laughs, and you kind of retroactively start asking questions of how, again, like last episode, is I can understand it be on the X-Files if they needed her for something else.
They must be used to reports coming from the X-Files, though, of Mulder just being bonkers. It's like, oh, well, we've got another bonkers person back.
Or it's like, here's Mulder's report. Now let's look at Scully's report. Ah, yes, okay, this is the level-headed one.
You need someone to balance it. They've been having the reports coming from Doggett making too much sense, so you just need someone bonkers to upset it.
I would say, and not less spelling mistakes than in Small Potatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think ultimately you're kind of right. The best thing would have been to just put the episode later. And
I do like it, though, and I saw one reviewer say it was the absolute high point of the season, which is a bit depressing because we're only 4 episodes in, and that makes me worried about what's coming next. But I will agree, it's a strong episode. It's a very moving episode. I like it a lot. It's not one for me that's got a lot of rewatchability just because the subject matter is so dark.
I think that's an interesting one, and admittedly, it's not a way I've usually thought about best of things, because I think we came up more recently in, there's a few films, specifically horror films, that we've watched, would both say are really, really good. Never going to watch them ever again.
Oh, Lake Mungo.
Lake Mungo, Saint Maud, and The Perfection.
Yes.
Tremendous films, all of them. Never want to watch them ever again. It just don't want to. It would not be...
To warn you in advance, if you're going to see any of those, they all focus on very dark subject matter. They are excellent, excellent films, and I would recommend them. Watch them once and prepare yourself before you do.
Yeah, try and get yourself in the best of moods. Do not watch these if you're feeling at all less than happy, because it's quite an experience, all of them.
I think I need If I ever saw Lake Mungo again, I'd need to be in a very, very positive place before I did so.
Bright sunlight, don't watch these at night. They're not scary at all. Well, they're not scary in the traditional film scary. They're unnerving, they're unsettling.
They're the kind of horror movies that don't make you jump out of your seat and your heart race, but they stick with you.
Yes, and you'll feel desperately uncomfortable afterwards on all three of them.
Mm.
It's an odd thing to say. Yeah, it's amazing films. I'm never watching it again. I just never. Don't want to. Can't.
I'd say, I'd put 4D in that category. It's a very bleak episode. It's not really enjoyable to watch, but it's good. I do think it's a strong episode.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. I think the weird thing is there's not a lot to the episode when you get down to it.
No, I even found that while summarising it, it's not a bottle episode, but it is quite contained.
Yeah. Oh, I suppose that's one thing, is Fulmer is... I think the writers don't have a grasp on Reyes. That really is really obvious. Fulmer is also tripping them over. They don't know how to handle him either. Because he swings so wildly per scene.
I think we're still trying to keep up that mystery about how on the level he is. Is he actually a bad guy, or is he just jealous of Reyes?
Yeah, but he's fluctuating so rapidly sometimes. It's like this thing that I appreciate some of this is one dimension versus another dimension, because at the start he's with Dogger and they seem to be on quite good terms.
Yeah.
And then you get to our dimension and he's kind of just doing procedural crap with Skinner.
Yeah.
It's odd, I think, after nothing important happened today, for him to be kind of willing to just throw Reyes under the bus when it's her gun shot Doggett. And, because he takes her down to that police station and is trying to trap her and everything.
Well, I'm not sure how
the relationship is not clear.
I'm thinking more of how indismissible this evidence is, because I think you mentioned previously that ballistic evidence is not as effective in real life as it's shown to be on TV.
Yes, I mean, it turns out, I think, they don't... It's one of the things where what's admissible in court and everything, and you can show this stuff to the jury, but you're not allowed to rely on it, kind of thing.
Like lie detectors.
Yeah, and I think even handwriting analysis and fingerprinting to a point is... The bullet analysis thing is, there are so many factors that can alter it. It's not actually worth using as a detection at all. And again, you will have to have... Okay, so we have Reyes' gun. It has been fired in the last 2 days. All the bullets were accounted for. She was 40 miles away. You have one person saying otherwise. He's kind of the red flag in that circumstance.
I feel, as often is the case with X-Files, we have to now look at Occam's razor.
And they don't. Except, as you said, for Daemonicus, Doggett is looking at Occam's razor, no one else is.
Yes, in Daemonicus, indeed, Doggett does follow Occam's... Doggett does often follow Occam's razor, to be fair. The problem is Occam's razor doesn't often work for supernatural cases, because all things are not equal.
And in this one, of course, Monica's right with parallel dimensions.
Yes. But the Occam's razor also would fold that Lukash was always the villain.
Yes. It's kind of interesting as well, as you said, I think where his double's gone is an interesting question. Because I think maybe if he'd murdered him or something.
When we're talking about doubles, the thing that brings to mind much is Jordan Pele's Us these days, where everybody does have a double. They just don't know about it until the bad thing happens. You see it in fiction a lot because Studio Ghibli's Ni no Kuni is all based around the concept of there being a fantasy parallel world where your double is. And a lot of the twists in the plot involve people's doubles maybe not being who you expect them to be.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Wizard of Oz to take a sort of slightly odd one.
Yeah, that's kind of possibly a dream, but also about doubles.
Yeah. I thought what was kind of odd, though, and this is possibly picking it a bit too much, is she sort of says, there's a parallel world that's like ours but different. Like, that's not actually the theory, Monica. It's that lies an infinite number of branching universes.
Well, no, from a philosophical standpoint, she could be referring to Earth 2.
She could, that terrible sci-fi series that Gunman hate.
Yes, but from a philosophical standpoint, Earth 2 is identical to our worlds, except for water doesn't exist on Earth 2. What they have instead is twater. And, a lot of philosophical, or at least in the School of Philosophy of Mind, thought experiments are diverged around us comprehending Earth 2. So you could have a kind of Earth 2 situation there. It's not that there's multiple branching worlds, there's just our world and that one.
True. Okay, I'll give you that one. Do we have anything else?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything today.
Okay, so next time we get Lord of the Flies.
and we get trust no one.
If you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also get us on social media, and please do hook me up if you'd like me to promote anything X-Files related at the start of an episode. You can find us on Twitter and Tumblr at GetStrange42, on Mastodon at GetStrange42@universedon.com, or on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange, and X-Files Rewatch podcast. Also, if you're not sick of my voice yet, I also stream live on Twitch TV under the name AdverseCamber42. I'm live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT, where I'm currently playing Yakuza 4 Remastered and Disco Elysium.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsgettingstrange, where for as little as $3 a month, you can have access to our bonus episodes, including our Let's Play of the X-Files game from 1998, starring Craig Wilmore and guest starring David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. Kind of.
They show up eventually.
Yeah, eventually. And Scully's not happy to see us.
And you get Skin Man and Mr. X.
And we do. And Mr. X killed us.
And Cancer Man very, very briefly.
If we die.
If you die, yep.
In one particular moment.
In one particular moment, yep.
Our fun time was had by all.
There were so many deaths.
And so much just where the hell is the cigarette? We know it is somewhere. I had to cut that bit down. Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find it on Compotech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember...
Who eats Polish sausage with plates?